The reading tonight is from Mark 6:30 to 34 and 53 to 56. The apostles gathered around Jesus and told him that all they had done and taught. He said to them, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest a while." For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in the boat to a deserted place by themselves. Now many saw them going and recognized them, and they hurried there on foot from all the towns and arrived ahead of them. As he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. When they had crossed over, they came to land at Gennesaret and moored the boat. When they got out of the boat, people at once recognized him and rushed about that whole region and began to bring the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, in villages or cities or farms, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him that they might touch even the fringe of his coat. And all who touched it were healed. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
There's this commercial on TV I find really charming. It's a Subaru commercial. And in the commercial, the storyline of the commercial is that there's these two 10-year-old boys talking to one another. And the father of one just purchased his new Subaru, and he's washing it in the driveway. And the son was trying to tell his good friend, and his good friend was not receiving this news very well, that the old Subaru sitting next to it is going to be for sale. And his friend says, "We've had all these good times in this car." And this very mature 10-year-old said, "That's okay, and they said, "We're going to sell it. It's going to be, it will find a new home." And then he says, then the friend says, "You don't think your dad would be upset if he found out that my hamster had babies in the back seat of the car?" And all of a sudden you see his head pop up over the car, And then the son says to the kid, his friend, he says, "That's okay, that's just normal wear and tear, dude." And I just think that's so cute. Of course, the problem with normal wear and tear is that eventually it takes its toll on things. And of course they're trying to sell Subarus, and they want you to know that the Subaru can handle wear and tear better than any other car. And everybody I know that's owned Subarus will attest to that. I've never known a person who wasn't happy with a Subaru. I can't say that about any other car made with Subaru. But it is a cute little commercial. But this whole sense of wear and tear. And what's true for cars is also true for us. We go through life and there's a certain amount of wear and tear. And it's normal. There's just stuff that happens. Stuff we have to work through. Stuff that takes place. And we plow through it. And as we get older, we tend to pick up the scars and the scratches and the dents and all that kind of stuff. We lose our hair, it turns gray. All that kind of stuff, the normal wear and tear. But again, over time, it begins to take its toll. It really does. And I'm not even talking about the really heavy stuff. The really heavy stuff. Someone we love dies. Someone we love gets sick. Someone we love leaves us. The job we love is no longer there. Those are major things. And I'm just talking about the everyday, ordinary stuff of life. It eventually wears on us. We see this in the gospel lesson. Jesus is simply doing what Jesus does. There is nothing special here for Jesus. This is his ordinary day. He and the disciples out there doing what God has placed on his heart to do. Preach, teach, heal, instruct, care, love. And obviously he's doing it very well. Because as he begins to do this on a regular basis, he begins to get a reputation, and people begin looking for him, and before you know it, he can't go anywhere without having to encounter people who need him. Who need him. And so the story begins with he and the disciples. They've been at it for a long day. The normal wear and tear is beginning to take hold. And so Jesus says, let's get out of here. Let's find a quiet place. Let's find a quiet place so we can rest and pray. Take care of ourselves. That's not an unreasonable thing. In fact, I suspect Jesus is showing some wisdom. He's knowing he's getting to that point where his humanity will not let him go any further. So he needs to step out to take care of the wear and tear. That's very human. And I've got to believe everybody in this room has found themselves at that place where they feel, I feel, we feel a need to sort of step out because the wear and tear, it takes its toll. It takes its toll. That's why our faith tradition really expects us to take Sabbath seriously. Now, Sabbath is a concept we find in the Old Testament where we take some time and step out of our normal life to care for our soul, to repair the damage of the wear and tear of the week. And this was so critical in the earliest days of the formation of our faith community that it became one of the 10 Commandments, that we step out on a regularly, weekly day to care for ourselves. And the reason why we do that, as in the story of our faith, at the end of 6 days of creativity, God himself needs to step out. And one of my favorite Old Testament scholars says, God feels the need to step out because if he keeps doing this, he's going to feel frustrated and angry, and he's going to need to whack someone. That's what he says. So God, on the 7th day, steps out of the creative process to rest. And if God needs to do that, then clearly we, God's creation, need to do that. And so Sabbath is such a critical reality. Now when we talk about Sabbath, we're not talking about a day off. I mean, there are people that work harder on their day off than they do when they go to work. They're up on the ladder, they're scraping the siding, or they're repairing the roof, or they're underneath the car, changing the oil, or they are running here and there on all these errands, or they're on the golf course for 18 holes, and then they got this and they got that, and then you get home at the end of the day, oh gosh. Sabbath is not a day off. We need a day off. I'm not suggesting a day off is a bad thing. I think we all need days off to take care of all that stuff. But a Sabbath is something different altogether. It is this whole idea that we step out of the patterns of our life so that we can pay attention to what's going on in our interior life, so that we can heal of brokenness and give attention to the soul. And I never realized how important that was until I went to this church named South Park in Dayton, Ohio in 1997. And my first year as a senior pastor of that church, my associate pastor and I had 31 funerals. The second year, we had 26 funerals. We were burying someone from that church every other week. I was constantly dealing with people's grief. At the end of that second year, I began to find things happening to myself that I had never ever experienced before. I'd be sitting in my office working, and I would just start to cry. I'd be driving down the road. I would just start to cry. Someone would come in and we might be talking about something and I would start to tear up and I'd have to sit there and fight the tears. Finally, I called a friend of mine who was and still is the director of pastoral care for one of the major hospitals in Columbus, Ohio. And I said, Susan, what do I do about this? What's going on here? And she says, don't you understand death, grief? Grief is cumulative. It's not like you go do your stuff. You do the funeral, you hold the hand, you say the words. You put the person in the ground and go home and it's all done. It's not all done. Then you do another one, and another one, and another one. And your soul begins to feel the weight of the cumulative effect of all that. And she says, you've got to do something about this. And if you don't do something about this, you're going to hurt yourself, your family, people that you care for. You're going to do something stupid. You need to go see a psychologist. And so I found an Episcopal priest who was also a psychologist, and we developed a very good friendship. And after a couple sessions, he said to me, you need to step out. And I'm not talking about vacation here. You need to go somewhere where you can begin to tend to the needs of your soul. And I did. Stepped out for about a month. Went to a monastery. Listened to the good monks guide us. Took a walk one day to the statuary. Sat down in the middle of it. Did not move for 3 hours. About 40 minutes in, I began to see in my imagination, remember in my mind, stuff deep from my past. It was like a parade. The things I did I was not so proud of. The feelings I held, the prejudices I owned, the relationships that were broken, they paraded before me. And I remember wanting to get up, and I did, and I started to kick the gravel, wanting all this to go away, and then I remembered what the good monk told me, to fight that temptation, go back and sit down. We're not wired to live in a 24/7 world, you and I. We may think we are. We may think because everybody's demanding this and that and everything from us, that we can work and live in a 24/7 world. But it's that normal wear and tear. And if we don't maintain ourselves, over time, that wear and care will do damage. That night I went to chapel, and Father Matthew gets up and he says, "Why do people come to a place like this?" And everybody sort of chuckled, and he said, "Nothing ever happens here. Nothing ever happens here." And so you find yourself a place and you do nothing, because nothing ever happens here. But then all of a sudden, something happens here. You've given yourself permission to let all that stuff surface into the conscious, where you and Jesus can do something about it. That's what Sabbath is. That's what Sabbath is. And the sad thing about the gospel lesson is that Jesus and the disciples are very much in need of Sabbath, and they can't seem to find space for it because they are being overwhelmed. And how does he do it? You know, there are times in our lives when we are overwhelmed and we can't do Sabbath. There just are. There just are. Someone we love is sick. Something happens at work. And no matter how hard you need to step out, you can't because you've got to attend to this. If we study the Gospels carefully, we discover something about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There is this place that Jesus likes to go. He goes there numerous times. It's just outside of Jerusalem. It's a town called Bethany. You know who lives in Bethany? Mary and Martha and Lazarus. He goes to Bethany a lot to see his friends, to let Martha feed him, and Mary to massage his feet. Talk whatever with Lazarus. You know, in Luke's Gospel, when he finally goes into Jerusalem, and it's Palm Sunday, and you got all that stuff going on, and then at the end of the day, he doesn't stay in Jerusalem. He sneaks back to Bethany. Jesus has a place. That's where his Sabbath takes place. And so he's in one of these spells where he and his disciples can't get away no matter where he goes because there's just all this need in front of him. The mere fact that Jesus has that place in his mind gives him enough of what he needs to do what he has to do. He knows that Bethany's always going to be there. We've got to have a Bethany, you and I. And this is one of the reasons why I think the church is at odds with the culture we're in today. This is why so many of our pews are empty today. Because the world outside of the building wants to live with the illusion that we can do everything 24/7 on our terms and our way. And the church, in its tradition, keeps saying no. You've got to step out. Because that normal wear and tear dude will hit you. It really will. So the challenge of the gospel this morning, this evening, is simply this. Where where is your Bethany? How have you carved out Sabbath for yourself? And if you haven't, why haven't you? And it's this question that the gospel is asking me as well as you. And as we live our lives in a 24/7 culture, it becomes so easy to let Bethany slip away from us. And it becomes so easy to keep putting off Sabbath. But as this wise kid says, it's wear and tear, dude. It'll get us if we don't. This is one of those commandments that's a gift. It's not like, oh, Mom, should I have? Do I have to? It's like, oh, thank you. I need this. We all need it. Know that you are loved in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.